The video opens with a group of teenagers laughing loudly near a park bench. Their eyes are fixed on an older man sitting quietly, his clothes worn and his belongings stuffed into a tattered backpack. They point and whisper, their mocking remarks just loud enough for him to hear. "Look at him," one sneers. "How do you even end up like that?" The man doesn't respond. Instead, he adjusts his cap and looks down, seemingly unaffected. But behind his calm exterior lies a story far more complex than anyone could imagine. What the bullies don't know is that the person they're ridiculing once walked a very different path, a path filled with success, respect, and admiration. As the insults escalate, the man finally speaks. His words are measured but heavy, causing the laughter to waver. There's a glimmer of recognition in the eyes of one teen, as if something about him seems strangely familiar. The group starts to sense that this isn't an ordinary homeless man. Who is he, and why does his presence feel so significant? Stick around to discover the truth about this mysterious figure and the shocking twist that leaves everyone speechless. The group of teenagers stood in stunned silence, caught off guard by the man's sudden response. His voice, steady and calm, seemed to carry an authority that didn't match his disheveled appearance. "You think you know me," he said, his eyes meeting theirs for the first time. There was no anger in his tone, just a quiet confidence that sent a shiver through the group. "But you don't." "Not yet." One of the teens, the boldest of the bunch, stepped forward, trying to shake off the unease. "What are you even talking about, old man? You're just some nobody who messed up his life. We're not scared of you." The man tilted his head, a faint smile curling at the edges of his lips. "A nobody, huh? Maybe. But every nobody has a story." He leaned back against the bench, his hands resting on the arms of his chair like a king surveying his court. "You'd be surprised what you can learn if you just ask the right questions." The tension in the air was palpable. The teens exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to walk away or press him further. It was the quieter one, standing slightly behind the rest, who finally spoke up. "Who are you, then?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried an unmistakable curiosity. The man chuckled softly. "That's a better question. But before I answer, let me ask you something. Do you think your life will always be what it is now? Easy, carefree, full of promise?" He gestured toward the row of sneakers lined neatly against the curb, their clean, expensive designs a stark contrast to his scuffed boots. "Things change. People change. And sometimes, life throws you into a storm you never saw coming." His words hung in the air like a heavy fog. The group, now uneasy, found themselves leaning in, drawn by the mystery surrounding him. The bold one crossed his arms, trying to reassert control. "What's your point? You're just trying to sound deep to make us feel bad." The man didn't flinch. "Not at all. I'm just saying. Life is full of surprises. Like this one." He reached into his tattered backpack and pulled out a small, leather-bound journal. Its cover was worn, the edges frayed, but the initials embossed in gold were still visible. "Recognize this?" The teens peered at it, their curiosity piqued. One of them squinted, trying to make out the letters. "Why would we recognize some old book?" The man opened it, revealing page after page of detailed sketches and notes. Each drawing was intricate, almost lifelike, a stark contrast to the man's current appearance. "I used to be someone," he said, his voice softer now. "Someone people looked up to. Someone who had it all." The group was quiet. For the first time, the man's words began to sink in. The sketches were mesmerizing, showing designs for buildings, cars, even landscapes. One of the teens murmured, "Did you draw these?" The man nodded. "I was an architect. A good one, too. This journal. It was my life's work. Ideas for projects, dreams I wanted to build. Some of these designs made it into the world. Others, well, they stayed in here." The bold teen scoffed, though his voice lacked its earlier bravado. So what happened? Why are you out here now? The man closed the journal and looked up at the sky, as if searching for an answer in the clouds. Life happened, he said simply. Mistakes, bad choices, circumstances beyond my control. One day, you think you're on top of the world. The next you're sitting on a park bench, being laughed at by kids who have no idea what life can do to a person. The quiet teen spoke again, his voice trembling slightly. Did you lose everything? The man met his gaze, his expression unreadable. Not everything. Not yet. The group shifted uncomfortably, the weight of his words pressing down on them. The bold teen, desperate to break the tension, laughed nervously. This is all just a story, isn't it? You're making this up to mess with us. The man's smile returned, though this time it was tinged with sadness. Believe what you want. But the truth has a way of revealing itself, whether you're ready for it or not. Just then, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The teens turned, startled by the sudden interruption. The driver, dressed sharply in a suit, stepped out and approached the man with a mixture of respect and urgency. Sir, he said, bowing slightly. I've been looking for you. The teens froze, their mouths agape. The man stood slowly, his movements deliberate. For the first time, they noticed the dignity in the way he carried himself, despite his ragged clothes. He turned to the group, his eyes twinkling with something they couldn't quite place. Was it amusement? Or something more profound? Like I said, he murmured, life is full of surprises. With that, he climbed into the car, the door closing behind him with a soft click. The driver nodded to the teens before getting back behind the wheel. As the car pulled away, the group was left standing in stunned silence, the echo of the man's words lingering in their minds. They didn't know it yet, but their encounter with the mysterious man was far from over. What they had just witnessed was only the beginning of a story that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the world and themselves. The teens stood rooted to the spot, the sleek black car vanishing into the distance like a shadow slipping into the night. The silence between them felt heavier now, filled with unanswered questions and a creeping sense of unease. Who was that man? Why did someone so important seem to know him? And why had he allowed himself to appear so vulnerable, only to leave in such a dramatic fashion? The bold teen tried to break the tension with a dismissive laugh. That was weird. Probably some guy playing a trick on us. Homeless people can be scammers, you know. But his voice lacked conviction, and the others weren't so quick to agree. The quiet teen shook his head, his brow furrowed in thought. No, there was something real about him. Those drawings. They were incredible. And that car? You don't just fake something like that. Another teen, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke. What if he wasn't lying? What if he really was someone important? His words hung in the air, unspoken doubts beginning to creep into everyone's minds. Days passed, but the encounter with the mysterious man lingered in their thoughts. It became a topic of whispered speculation among the group, each of them secretly wondering if they'd missed something vital in his story. The bold teen, unwilling to let go of his skepticism, decided to dig deeper. Armed with the memory of the initials embossed on the leather journal, he began scouring the internet late into the night, searching for clues. It wasn't long before he found something. An old article, buried deep in the archives of an architectural magazine, featured a profile on a prodigious designer whose innovative concepts had once captivated the industry. The man's face, younger and brighter but unmistakably the same, stared back at him from the screen. The bold teen's breath caught as he read the headline, Visionary Architect Andrew Marlowe, Building Dreams from the Ground Up. Andrew Marlowe. That was the name. The article spoke of groundbreaking projects, awards, and a meteoric rise to fame. But then, near the end, there was a subtle mention of a scandal, something vague about legal troubles and financial ruin. The details were murky, and further searches yielded little information. It was as if Marlowe had vanished from the world entirely after the article was published. The bold teen shared his discovery with the group the next day. They huddled around his phone, scrolling through the article and studying the face of the man they'd mocked just days before. "So it's true," the quiet teen said, his voice filled with a mix of awe and guilt. He really was someone. But the bold teen wasn't satisfied. "Yeah, but what happened to him? What was the scandal? Why is he homeless now? There's still so much we don't know." Driven by their newfound curiosity, the group began to piece together fragments of Marlowe's past. They visited the library, combed through old newspapers, and even spoke to a local historian who vaguely remembered hearing about Marlowe's fall from grace. What they uncovered painted a picture of a man who had once been a towering figure in his field, only to lose everything in a series of devastating events. The details were chilling. A failed project that bankrupted his firm. A betrayal by a close business partner who left him to shoulder the blame. And, most heartbreaking of all, the loss of his family, his wife and daughter, who had walked away when the pressure became too much to bear. By the time they were done, the teens felt a deep sense of shame for how they had treated him. But their curiosity wasn't just driven by guilt. There was something about Marlowe that intrigued them, something that felt unfinished. They began to keep an eye out for him, hoping to see him again and perhaps make amends. Weeks passed, and just when they were beginning to think they'd never see him again, fate intervened. It happened late one evening as they were walking home from the park. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the quiet streets. That's when they saw him, sitting on the same bench where their paths had first crossed. This time, he looked even more tired, as if the weight of the world had grown heavier on his shoulders. The group approached cautiously, unsure of how to begin. It was the quiet teen who spoke first. "Mr. Marlowe?" he said tentatively. The man looked up, his eyes weary but alert. "You again," he said with a faint smile. "What brings you back?" The bold teen stepped forward, his usual bravado replaced with sincerity. We looked you up. We know who you are." Marlowe raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "Do you now? And what did you find?" The teens took turns recounting what they had discovered, their voices tinged with both excitement and regret. As they spoke, Marlowe listened intently, his gaze distant but focused. When they were finished, he nodded slowly. "So, you know the headlines," he said. "But headlines don't tell the whole story." "Then tell us," the quiet teen said. "We want to understand." Marlowe hesitated, his fingers tracing the edges of his journal. For a moment, it seemed as if he might refuse. But then, with a deep sigh, he began to speak. What followed was a story that left the teen spellbound. Marlowe described his rise to fame, the joy of creating something meaningful, and the pride of seeing his work come to life. But he also spoke of the darker side, the ruthless competition, the backstabbing, and the relentless pressure to succeed. He detailed the betrayal that had cost him everything, the legal battles that drained his finances, and the loneliness that came when his family left. "But the hardest part," he said, his voice breaking, "was losing myself in the process. I became so consumed with proving my worth that I forgot what really mattered." The teens were silent, their hearts heavy with the weight of his words. Finally, the bold teen asked, "Why are you out here? Why not try to rebuild your life?" Marlowe gave a bittersweet smile. "Rebuilding takes more than just effort. It takes time, resources, and sometimes forgiveness from others and from yourself." Before they could ask more, the sound of footsteps interrupted them. A woman approached, her face pale and her expression urgent. "Mr. Marlowe," she said breathlessly, "I've been looking for you." "There's someone who wants to see you." The teens exchanged puzzled glances as Marlowe stood, his face a mixture of surprise and apprehension. "Who?" he asked. The woman hesitated, then said, "Your daughter." The air seemed to crackle with tension as Marlowe's eyes widened, his composure faltering for the first time. The teens watched, their curiosity and concern growing. Whatever was about to happen next, they knew it would change everything.